Hey everyone, I'm Gabriel from ALB. Today I have a very special guest. His name is called Chris Simmons. Chris, say hi to everybody.
Hi, how you doing? You all right?
How are you? I'm alright too. I think this is the first time that we have met in
Yeah.
person or in virtual. Yeah, I'm just really happy to see a new face in the architectural content creation scene. I think the one of the very few directors like maybe who are actually taking it seriously in terms of content creation, because I always see a lot of, especially on LinkedIn or
Hmm.
Instagram, there's a lot of project project wins type of post or even awards,
Yeah,
but not too much
definitely.
of the education and not too much of the mentoring side of things. So I'm very happy to have Chris on board today for the podcast recording. Chris, could you just give a little introduction of yourself and maybe share about where you are right now in your journey?
Yeah, sure. My name's Chris Simmons. I'm currently an associate director at Squire and Partners. So we are, what are we, around 150 architects based in Brixton in London.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been there for 8 years. And I joined basically when I became, after I'd completed my part three and became a registered architect. Um, and, I think I've always been very passionate about architecture education and mentoring. And I've been sort of lucky enough to mentor quite a few colleagues over my time at this practice and my previous practice, and whilst also sort of creating and keeping links with university as well. So I think my sort of main interests and sort of journey into architecture and content creation and where I am currently is the sort of intertwine of practice and education, and kind of historically how these things, I think lots of people come out of university and probably struggle getting into practice, and the realities of practice are quite daunting and different than they were probably expecting, and I think it's probably my job as someone in their sort of mid career to help people and make that transition better and easier and hopefully more educated. And that's sort of where I came upon the idea of architects instruction, which is my sort of education mentoring website platform. And really, that came about. It came from lockdown, really. So I think originally, I wasn't on Instagram. I didn't really post very much, and I started posting my drawings. So I'm incredibly passionate about drawing and sketching, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. But I started posting my drawings, and it was a way of sort of communicating with architects and other people when I felt quite isolated. And just through sharing of my work, it opened up so many sort of conversations and so many doors with other architects and other artists and designers, sort of thing. I really got a lot from it, and just being able to connect with people, by doing something that I really loved, and then building upon that, it seemed like a method at which could share experience and ideas. And obviously there's a few of us and such as Gabriel and others out there doing these sorts of things and trying to help and share our ideas and share our experiences. So I think I'm kind of a little bit further along my journey than some other people. So I feel like I've got something valid to sort of bring to that space. And it's it's really interesting having the dialogue and seeing people at different stages of their career and all of that.
And
So
actually, even
yeah,
different countries as well. Like, after,
yeah,
imagine after. Do
completely.
you even imagine after launching the Instagram and LinkedIn architecture instruction, you never get to expect talking to people like overseas and
Mm,
collaborating with a lot of content creators. Yeah, and
yeah,
also
completely.
this
It's a complete
it's
level
very
playing
interesting
field
to
sort of thing.
yeah, it's interesting to see more and more like people at your stage mid career starting to take initiative to share more about your experiences, that is really lacking in terms of the between the graduate just out of uni, starting out, and somebody who's in mid-career like yourself, and maybe I'm maybe in between you and the fresh grad. Like I'm about 3 years experience so far. So not many of people like you, like way more advanced than I am, sharing important experiences, important lessons. And I'm sure there are a lot of young graduates who are very thirsty for knowledge, and they're trying to
Completely.
get all of these opportunities, to learn from you guys, and also from anybody with more experience.
I think it is really interesting because, obviously generationally, there is a younger generation which grew up with Instagram and social media and things like that, I kind of did, but was on the cusp of. And I think, like you say, architects use social media in a very different way than, maybe we do now. It is about, we submitted this for planning, or we won this competition, or we did this. It's about celebrating our triumphs. It's still a closed door of, what's your process and how did you get there, and the ideas behind it. It's kind of, and I think for me, one of the things I'm also really passionate about is communicating what architects do. There's this whole ongoing problem in architecture about being undervalued, and it's kind of, to the public, we're kind of seen, we're still kind of held up as someone, with the quality of design, but lots of people don't understand what we do. And, part of our job, I think, and being recognized for the value that we can bring is communicating that. And, something like social media allows us to communicate that daily or, wholly, and it doesn't all have to be finished work. I think, there's that really good Austin Kleon book, which is about showing you working. It's completely that. It's about communicating what we do, how we do it, and, what we can help people with. And whether that's in the architectural circle, or whether that's in, to the wider public, it's all bringing beneficial information, I think.
I think you touched on a very interesting point about value articulation. So most of the problems we face, as designers, is because we are undervalued, overworked, and this undervalued portion, I think, is very, very key, because how our industry works is basically through money, right? Money drives the economy, the creative economy, and without this financial support, not many designers can actually be part of the project, or maybe they're underpaid and then they become disillusioned in a sense. So one of the ways to actually, the interesting thing about it is, the more we share about our own processes, like how do we derive to a design decision, how do we what do we face as obstacles along the way, instead of showing just the project that is done, or maybe we win a project. If we show, quite similar to how the tech industry does it, right, in social media, they share their code snippets, they share their maybe scripts. It may or may not be publicly accessible, but maybe the concept behind certain things that we do. If more of architects actually share this process, I could imagine that the public, as well as the potential clients, may understand why we need to be more valued, and
completely.
How else can we architects value add if we don't share about it? Maybe they're not aware about it.
Completely agree. It's such an important thing, and it's something we can do now. We have the tools. We have, it's the way the world is going. So, I think architects are, historically we lag behind in certain areas. So, it's something, like you say, the tech industry have got their head screwed on, and they know, they know how to do this sort of thing. So, I think we need to catch up.
One of the reasons I see is because maybe in I'm not sure about you in the UK, but in Singapore there's large firms, right? The IP, the creative, maybe the confidential side of things, most of the companies may not be inclined to share this online. Even the simple things like on the site visit, what do you face? I'm told that I shouldn't be taking pictures and posting on Instagram. So that is that. There's still this traditional way of thinking, like what can we share? for the tech industry, for example, I always bring it to that because they are the most advanced in terms of thinking, in terms of storytelling on social media. Their processes and maybe their even sharing tools that are free online. So that, in that sense, it's also marketing for the whole industry, as well as also for the individuals who are sharing the content. But for architects, maybe we do need some sort of education to maybe see how we can share stories, but also understanding that this doesn't really jeopardize our IP, our intellectual property. But it's more about this sharing. On the one hand, value adds our industry. Maybe we can say we have this special maybe like a plugin or like a design process, and then maybe we articulate it through maybe some drawings, series of presentations, visuals, telling the whole story in detail. Maybe of course with the client's approval, right? And as well as and maybe packaging it way better than just putting it on a website and or like an hour-long lecture about the project, bite-sized.
Yeah, completely.
And
yeah, I think
that's what I see
it's that sort of
more
traditional
architects are
thing.
doing. Yeah.
I think you're right about the sort of confidentiality. There's at Squire and Partners we work on very large projects with international clients, and some of those are sensitive, and some of those have non-disclosure agreements, things like that. So yeah, you're right. There are amounts of information that we just wouldn't be able to share. But I think it is at the moment we're not trying to open the door to that. We're not trying to share anything. And maybe the people that are, especially in larger firms, maybe the people that run the social media and things like that aren't so interconnected with the people doing the work. They're looking for information to share rather than openly sharing it. And I think maybe that comes because the work that I share is my own private work. Is my own journey and experience. So I think you're right. And unless you are higher up in a firm, or a smaller firm where you control that sort of thing, it is probably difficult. I remember watching a YouTube video by Eric Reinhold, 30 by 40, and he was saying about how at the beginning of a project he gets the client to agree to this will be shared on social media and this is part of my process, sort of thing. Maybe it's about that. Maybe it's just agreeing the principles at the beginning and saying something that's beneficial to our industry is sharing this information.
So the mentoring program that you have started with Architects Instruction, what was the number one, or what is the most common question that these graduates ask you about?
I think there's so in the UK we have part 1, part 2, part 3. So part 1 is a 3-year course. Then you are meant to do a year out in practice. You then go back for your part 2, which is 2 years. You then do at least another year out in practice. And then your part 3 would be your sort of final exam and all the sort of business side and legal side of architecture. So you have hurdles at each stage. You're coming out as a fresh graduate from your part 1, and the difference between your experience at university, which I think a lot of UK universities are very conceptual, very creative, very artistic. Mine certainly was. I went to an arts-based university, and it was all about learning design process and the design sort of way of thinking and drawing and things like that. And I think with graduates coming out of university with those experiences into practice, it can feel like a completely different job. It can feel like a completely different world. So I think there is, the big questions that I'm coming across are, one, how do I get a job? What's the best way to present myself, to show my skills, and to fill in the gaps when I don't have the skills that the practices are looking for? One particular thing is software. People and practices seem to focus really heavily on your very specific software skills, whereas I kind of feel software is a tool, and it's more about understanding process and the concept of the creation of an element in the software. So I'm not sort of, I'm not very keen on, people learning very specific pieces of software, because some practices might use it and some might not. I mean, obviously that there is a sort of a push towards BIM generally, and we use BIM and Revit. But I have conversations from a lot of graduates that are very fearful of applying for places because they don't have X number of years of very specific experience within a certain software package. And I very much push them towards the idea that people are able to see through that, and on the job training is happening and can happen. I mean, not all architects' practices treat it like that. There may be some more that are closed-minded, and if you don't have the experience on that piece of software, then you're not coming in the door. But with a closed-minded way of judging people like that, it's I'd probably prefer not to work for them. So getting your foot in the door is the one big question at the beginning of your career, and then once you're there, it's about it's about experience. It's about how do I show myself as kind of willing to learn and able, and not ask too many questions, but ask the right questions. How do I position myself to grow within a firm? How, what's the best way around mentoring within the office? Because, I think I've always been quite lucky in my career to have quite good mentors and have people that take the extra time to, check in on me and my career and answer questions and, sit for longer than they need to with me to learn things. And, not everyone's had that experience. Lots of people are overworked and underpaid, like we said. They are there, if you're less experienced as a part one or part two, lots of higher management might see you as a tool to render or to do this or to do that, and you're one of many people. So it's a tough industry, and I think that's kind of why I'm hoping to sort of spread this mentoring idea and fill in the gaps for people that haven't been so lucky to have good mentors within the office. So yeah, I'd say, one is getting into practice and that, and then two is how you kind of flourish within practice, and how you don't just get stuck in the daily grind. You sort of, you try to progress and you try to get this experience. And yeah, I think those are the kind of the two biggest common threads, I think.
It's a very interesting way of questions that the people ask, because most of the time they are asking because it's a problem that they face, right? So be it entering the company, finding a job, their portfolios, that's the first stage. I will actually want to dwell more into the once you get into the door. There's this stage of our journey where we are exposed to a lot of different new processes, a lot of people, like different parties, even learning about contracts, learning about the technical details, how things are built. All of these things were never really touched upon in school. So when I did a mentoring program, I'm currently doing one as well. Just one person actually, as a trial. I actually mentored this lady from America. She is also working right now, as she just joined the firm. So the questions that she asked me is also about very specific things, like, for example, like a lighting plan, or things like a fire plan. All of these technical things that we don't really get to learn in school, and now we all have to quickly understand the concepts behind all of these building codes, contracts, technical details, even coordination with engineers and quantity surveyors. All of these soft skills and hard skills are highly lacking, especially when we see fresh grads, because they are not exposed to it.
Completely.
Especially in Singapore, where I'm based. And we do see a problem. So that's why I've actually had a weekend over lunch with some of our alumni from school. and we all talked about the same issues. We really wanted to start something new with the realization of our peers are leaving. Even for myself, my batch, let's say for example, I think maybe 20 to 30% are still here, still in the practice, but the rest of them have already left the industry, and it's quite a sad thing to have happening in Singapore. I'm not sure about UK, but this problem is becoming more and more apparent, especially. I'm not sure about UK. How is it actually? Is it
Yeah,
getting?
I would completely agree. I was writing a LinkedIn post on this the other day about how many transferable skills we learn, and then that are relevant to other industries. You have people leaving for UX and UI sort of thing. You have especially here in London, we have lots of people that are going client side and becoming development managers and doing that. I think lots of developer clients see a lot of benefit in having an experienced architect within their tool set to help them. And unfortunately, that they pay a lot better than architects do. And that does have something to do with it. People, there is a generation of architects and coming up architects that are disenfranchised because of the failings of partly the work environment and the culture, partly the value, the wages that we get. I think it is a real problem. I think and if it's happening here and it's happening in Singapore, I'm sure it's happening elsewhere.
So just some of my thoughts of this issue is, firstly, like I think we mentioned earlier, value articulation. So nobody knows what value we bring as architects. So that is one. The other one is also the policies that are in place, and also I think for Singapore, the contracts, the way they put a fee proposal is still fixed. I mean, there's no, it's not increasing. There's a certain wage, and then let's say for a principal and an architect and a senior designer, drafter, so there's different roles, and for each project, that's tied to a certain wage per hour, and then that's how they calculate the fee. I think that could be worked out even better because times have changed, and the corresponding values should be increasing as well. Maybe tagged to a certain current market figure. Things like, from what I see, is also the like mentoring, guidance, especially in the first 3 years of the practice. Also giving opportunities for young designers to maybe voice out their concerns. So it may not be within the firm, because some firms, like there's big firms, there's small firms, and the small firms usually, there are pros and cons actually. Some big firms do have in-house training like mine. But before that, actually, I was in a small firm, so there wasn't any much training and guidance. So that was pretty lacking. That's why I left and joined this big firm now in Singapore. So they are now offering in-house training, which I really find really valuable, and I appreciate it a lot. So given that, that's why, given the training and the investment put in me, and also I think my boss is also quite open for me to share my concerns, and if there's anything that troubles me in terms of maybe I need more guidance or maybe need more time or somebody to help me with my certain work, I would do so. So these are for me as a young designer, this is what I see, and the criteria of me, more like the pull factors of staying, and not push factor of leaving the industry. Yeah, so that's my understanding and also my experience. From what I see from other peers who have left, is mostly because of the culture and the toxic environment, and also lack of guidance. So these three things have been there and is not improving. So I'm concerned about the industry, because firstly there's a talent drain. All of the good talented people, like you said, have transferable skills that are more valued and are paid better, and also maybe given a better work environment like UX UI, things like property development. Most of the time they're also doing like policy planning in housing boards, or even even food centers. Yeah, it's quite a lot of interesting paths. And the role of architect is also more specialized. So it's actually being broken up into so many different paths.
Yeah.
The problem is because there's so many new technologies and there's so many new regulations that weren't present before 10 years ago. Like, for example, like sustainability, maintainability, and also digitalization. In Singapore, there's a lot of different regulations that came up, especially within the last 5 years. And I think this is why architects like I'm not an architect yet, but almost there. The designers are all really frantic about the increasing number of regulations. That's why, on the one hand, we see more and more specialists in only dwelling into one particular zone, maybe like environmental sustainability, and then maybe another company, a small firm, they're doing facade design. So the architect now has maybe the client wants them to delegate the work. Let's say I want this particular facade firm to do it because they have the manpower to do it, or maybe they are well known for the good facade, and then maybe they take away your portion about sustainability and put it into another firm, like a subcontractor. So, and then the architect is like stuck with, and the possibly undervalued as well, because maybe on the one hand, it could have been the case that we are lagging behind in terms of skills and knowledge. On the second is maybe we are overworked and there's no time for us to do anything, to even consider the different aspects of the design. So that is the struggle I think architects are facing. And the role of architect is changing. And I see it as becoming more spread out. And the architect is just fully on maybe one part of it and then delegates the work to other firms and other people. So what do you think
it's
about
so interesting because
this scenario?
I've had this conversation with so many people.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law works for a main contractor. So I always have very interesting conversations with him because he works with a lot of architects and he's obviously on the other side. And, I think historically architects, over the last, 25, 30 years, we have positioned ourselves away from risk. And I think risk is one thing is, we've kind of made our own bed in terms of not being paid as much because, our firm in London, there are, some older architects which, can remember times when we didn't have 20 consultants on a job. We didn't have a facade engineer, we didn't have a sustainability consultant, we didn't have a planning consultant, we didn't have all these other consultants. And, when you think about it, that is the dilution of the architect's role. In most jobs that I've worked on, we haven't been contract administrator. Our part 3 in the UK is all about learning skills, about contract management and things like that. And the majority of the time, no one will ever use those skills because now project managers do that role. And partly that's because we've pushed it that way because we quite like designing things and drawing nice things. Don't get me wrong, I like designing things and drawing things too, and can kind of understand why we've done that.
But it isn't a full scope of an architect that could have been, right? Because
exactly,
architect used to be the one who builds things, who designs for sustainability, who does everything, the whole spectrum of the design, the whole spectrum of the project management. And sadly, we have actually, like you said, diluted this role of an architect. Yeah. And you were saying about?
So I think it's so interesting because it's partly we've, not we, the generation before us or, whatever, but, it's, we're in quite an interesting position now, but also as we said, we have so many transferable skills. We have so many, we have the opportunity to be, we are the lead designer. We are the people at the front of the design team. I work in a large practice. We have, big teams and big consultant teams. And, most of the times in the meetings, you are the one at the head of the table trying to get people to talk together, trying to get, the design out of people because they are specialists, and I think it's really important for architects personally. So I think our benefit is not being a specialist. I know a little bit about everything. Not everything, but about every part of the construction process. I don't know exactly how to build that wall, and I don't exactly know how to do that SAP calculation. I don't exactly know how that concrete column stands up, but I kind of understand, enough to piece all those things together. If you get me, our role is a generalist, and I think that's really good, and I think part of the way we need to approach, design in the future is to try and, partly take more risks and get more involved with clients and sites, and, maybe architects become more like developers and look for interesting ideas of ways they can, develop land sustainably. And, rather than, in some experiences, you will have developers that don't, sustainability is not of interest. It's something they do through regulation, but it's not, it's not something that they're doing because they're passionate about it. Whereas, a lot of us, the majority of us, it's something that's really key to our process and key to our, design ideas is sustainability. And I think a lot of the time is, we can have these creative ideas and we can take on, potentially roles of developers and planners and things like that to try and move things forward. And not only that, we have ideas of strategy. It's not just about the building, it's about the master plan and about the citywide, design. It's, we fundamentally are the big picture thinkers. We are the ideas and opportunities. And, I think a lot of value can be shown and be given through that method. I mean, also, touching on what I was saying before, these conversations I have with my father-in-law, who's the main contractor, a lot of projects in London go for design and build. So, the contractor is responsible ultimately for the design and construction of the project. Sometimes we get novated, sometimes they have their own in-house architects. And, compare that with 30 years ago, they were all traditional contracts, and we would do the drawings and the contractor would build it. Whereas now, the architect will do a design intent. I say I want it to look like this and roughly be made out of this and kind of work like that, and then it's up for the specialist subcontractor or someone with the specialist knowledge to detail, coordinate, and construct that thing. And it's that thing of the transition of risk and apportionment of risk has changed. And, in part and parcel, the specialist person who completely understands that curtain walling system or whatever it might be is detailing it because they're the people constructing it and understand it. I think these two things are running in parallel, and it's about now, where we land and where we, where we can bring our skills. Maybe more front end,
The funny part about this dilemma is basically like risk. Do we push it on to the contractor, or do we take it more on ourselves as architects? And the rise of these new contract types like design and build, again, there's also two sides of the coin, right? On the one side, from what my understanding is basically more time is available for architects, when we delegate the work to the contractor. And we design the project, maybe design intent, and then let the contractor detail and everything. And then this gives us more time to do other things that is more valuable. That is one way to see it. The other way to see it is, unfortunately, if we are novated to the contractor side, and there won't be a lot of design freedom in that sense, and so the coordination with the client is less. It's more between the contractor and the architect, because they're actually under the contractor. So there's also the sad part about this design and build contract models. But I mean, we're all at crossroads now, and to me, there won't be one solution. There's gonna be many different paths, and that could be the right thing to do. That could be the right thing to do, not to establish the only way to run an architecture practice, but allow for different modes of working, different ways of running projects, different types of roles for architects. So it may not be just, some architects may want to do everything, and some architects may just want to be only designing and then delegate the work to other people. So that I feel that both ways are okay. I feel that is
Yeah, no, I agree. Because ultimately architecture is so varied, and that's bringing it back to the mentoring thing. People have so varied experiences because you can be an architect in an office of one person, you can be an architect in an office of 500 people. The size, the location, the type of projects. This is why our experience. Why it takes so long to become an architect. Why even now I don't always feel like I know what I'm doing because, projects are one-offs. Every time we find a site, it's different. It's in a different place. They build things slightly differently, or, it's everything is a prototype. All the people that come through, as architecture students and young architects are, there's not one model. You're not doing things. You will find methodologies that are completely different in one practice to another. Even your learning, your experience at one university is completely different than at a different university. In the UK we have BA, which is an arts degree, or a BSc, which is science degrees. There are fundamentally quite different processes within those two qualification paths, with people getting completely different experiences. So, taking that in hand, along with, architects all use different software, and it's a minefield. And for people to try and navigate that and come out of the end of it and have, a sort of holistic view of things is very difficult. I think ultimately, my opinion on the whole process is kind of, any experience is good experience because it's taught you one thing or another. I mean, not necessarily sort of toxic work cultures and overworking. That's a pretty poor experience. But I mean, more. I've worked on a house extension. It's tiny, but actually, I completely understand how things go together. Whereas, if you work on a master plan, you understand things at a completely different scale, but not in the same level of detail. Like it's kind of, I've got friends that are at the same, the same age as me, but have just worked on planning. So they fundamentally do not have the same skill set that I do. We're both architects. We both, probably, doing similar jobs, but based on the type of projects you're on, your experience is completely different. It's such a big and varied field.
It's basically like, the makeup of an architect, the DNA. There's all these different genes, right? And it's also based on experience, and the combined experience of anybody who is practicing architecture, and that forms the DNA of a person. And it will not be the same for every single one of us. And that's a beautiful thing about architecture. And
completely,
I do see the potential of anybody who's in the same fraternity in architecture, pursuing new paths in the metaverse, in urban design, in technology, in building science, building material science, all the different paths that we should take, and not just only the traditional path of like, I need to be an architect, I need to start a firm, I need to do projects, but feel free, even for anyone who's listening, feel free to join facade design, urban planner. You can also be a property agent. A lot of different things you can try. There's these skills that we have, especially in school, in university. To me, is the curiosity of learning, and also learning how to learn. That is, and how to adapt to situations. I think that is very key in architectural school, at least. And I do see it's still there, especially in my school. Especially when I see the juniors, who are I still in contact with them. I see how the syllabus is still very challenging for them in terms of design, or maybe in terms of the syllabus, but it does train them to think out of the box, to learn on the spot, unguided, and also to question the brief. That's why I still see that it's still in the education system that shouldn't change. But these skills are with you for a lifetime, basically.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think one of the most important things about university, and is about teaching design curiosity, Fundamentally, that's what it's about. That's, your process, whether I'm designing a master plan or whether I'm designing a 1-to-5 detail, the process that I'm going through, the way you think, and, the way you can visualize in 3D and things like that, they are fundamental to that, whether the thing is this big or this big. And, I think that's why I'm really keen on kind of communicating the idea that whereas, there is kind of a disconnection between university and practice, and it is difficult. And there are certain universities in the UK, at least that I'm aware of, like London School of Architecture, which is trying to make something that's more intertwined with practice. So you go to practice for 3 days a week, and you are in university 2 days a week. And, I'm a mentor at the LSA, and it is a much kind of more interesting and linked course. But ultimately, any university, like you say, is about learning the process of design. For me, your experience picks up on all those other things, because if in university you're just learning about lighting plans and you're just learning about X and Y and, all the technical specifics, yes, maybe you come out into practice and, you can get your head down and you can do all these very technical things, but, that's not all it's about. It's, for me, the university is teaching you the fundamentals, and then it's the kind of on-site experience and on-the-job experience, which is giving you that, technical knowledge. I mean, there's got to be somewhere where we land, somewhere between this.
Like a balance, right? A balance of
exactly
the design skills and the technical skills.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I do see
and like you say, things change. What you're learning today, and as regulations change, and for example, a few years ago we had the Grenfell fire here, and our fire regulations have completely changed because of it. So what I learned a couple of years ago is no longer relevant, and fire regulations have completely changed, and that's the environment that we're having to adapt to. So. What I learned in architecture school, if it's a very specific piece of code and a very specific, something, it's probably no longer relevant. It is about learning to design and design adaptedly and that thirst for knowledge sort of thing. I don't have the answers, but I think it is really interesting. It's kind of, like you say, it is balance.
Yeah, I mean, the stakeholders, especially especially the principals of firms, the universities, all have to come together and to think about this solution. It's not easy, I would say, but I think definitely one of the key directions is to make it more balanced and more structured. More structured because, or maybe not sure for everybody, but some people are fortunate enough to have good mentors along the way while in the day job. At the job. Yeah, I do not agree to add more technical modules into school, because you can add a bit, but not totally bore or even drown them with regulations and stuff like that. But I think the key piece of the puzzle is, after you graduate, what is happening from 0 years to 3 years. This is the crucial part, because most of my friends are leaving at the second, third year. Then they feel that they're not being guided, and also, on top of the toxic environment and the low pay. But the third reason why they're leaving is because of this lack of guidance. Yeah, and
do you think it's more about
some people are also the principals, the bosses, they do not have time to guide. Yeah, that's one problem. The other problem is there's no awareness of the overview of the whole job scope of an architect, and then they get to stumble upon a problem that I've never seen it before, and I don't know how to go about it, and they may or may not do the correct thing, and then they just give up. That also becomes like the question going back to, how do we adapt? How do we learn how to learn? But there's only an extent to it that we can actually learn how to learn, because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah. You were saying something?
No, I I think it is really important because, I think having good mentors, most of the time the mentor is one doing it because they care, because they know that they, and that's why I'm doing it, because I know that I needed someone at that point. There's
We
an
were all there at the
Instagram.
start. We were all there
Exactly.
before.
There's a quote that I posted on my Instagram, which is like, be the person who you needed when you were younger. Yeah, and that's completely what it's about. It's about, kind of, you were in that situation and now you can transfer those skills and knowledge to somebody else and help. And it's part of the process of bringing people up. And fundamentally, not everyone thinks the same. Not everyone thinks or has time to do that. And time is a controlling factor. If you fundamentally are overworked and underpaid, do you have the time and inclination to help someone that you're meant to be managing in the same way? Maybe not. I don't know. But maybe it is more about the control and policing of architects to have time to manage
to share information,
and inform, to share information. Yeah, completely. Yeah. Because without, I suppose, some people, without being forced to do it, obviously don't do it. And I'm always very keen when I always have this conversation with people in my team about I don't want to just give you a task and then you do it, and then give you another task and then you do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about go and do that and then bring it back. It's about, this is where we need to get to. Now we need to go on this journey about how we get there. You know what I mean? Like kind of, it's part of that design process. And you're completely right about, if people aren't, involved in the bigger picture, you don't know why you're doing this thing. You don't know what the implication is. You don't know why it's important, or what's the ramifications if it doesn't, work in a certain way. You need to understand the big picture if you're doing the detail. It's not just about, we're designers. We need to understand all the different things, all the stakeholders, all the people involved, all the, the environment around it. And that's, like I said, that's the same whether it's a master plan or a 1-to-5 detail or whatever. And it's completely on, us, people like me, mid-career architects that should be and hopefully are in a lot of cases, sharing knowledge, because that's how I learned stuff, is people sharing knowledge and taking time to teach me things. And like we're saying, with the architecture education system, the way it's set up is that a lot of onus is put on us gaining that technical side in practice. So it's part of our job as architects. That it should be written into our codes of part of our job. 10% of our time should be us sharing knowledge with each other, and and firms need to factor that in.
Especially in big firms, I don't see, specifically there are opportunities, but I'm just thinking about what's happening in my firm right now. There's not really a set time for you to ask your mentor, ask your supervisor about stuff. Most of the time, they are rushing as well, and we are also rushing. So my boss takes some time to actually explain. Let's say, for example, if I have a problem at work, or I need a solution. Maybe I found that there's a non-compliance in the design, so we need to rectify it, right? And I actually asked my boss, how can we do it? I mean, initially I'll prepare some options, so that's my initiative, and also to check with them. You say, for example, if it's a variation order, for example, and then I have to check the costing as well for this change. Sadly, it's after tender, so these changes are after tender. So basically, I have to check the costing. How much does it need to rectify to change this, as well? So all of these things I collected first. Basically, I did my own part to actually establish 2 options at least, and then to present to the boss. And I believe she appreciates my effort and takes the time to explain. So that's how I also feel that I'm also learning at the same time, because I did my part to try to study and also to see what can I do, and she also takes the time to explain why this option may not be the best option, for example.
Completely.
Like, that's how I learn.
Yeah.
So that's also why. That's a
That's
good
so
boss.
important, because that's something I always tell the people I work with and my mentees, sort of thing. I mean, there's always that fallacy of there's no stupid question, but I think it is about coming. You need to come to the table if you want someone's time. You need to come to the table with your
Something.
process and information. With something, like you say. So you've gone away, you've tried to solve the problem. You're showing the two options, and now your boss is willing to spend their time to have that conversation with you. I think that's completely the right way, and that's a really good example of how younger architects can work, and maybe that is a way to open the door to those conversations. I think that's really key.
All right. So we've talked a lot about education, mentoring. Yeah, the conversation will never end. I mean, I think
exactly.
The key takeaway. What do you want to give to those listening right now? Any advice for young designers who need advice, guidance?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's really about the job market. Finding a job is one part of the process. And don't fall in for the traps of the attractiveness of these star architects and things like that, and being exploited. And I think it is about getting an experience, getting your foot in the door, getting some sort of post-university experience is so key. And whether you are working on large-scale things that are very sexy airports in the middle of nowhere across the world, or very small house extensions, it's all experience, and it's all forming part of like you were saying, part of your DNA as an architect. And there's so many different parts of it, and each experience brings a new layer to you, and a layer of your experience. So I think never sort of feel bad about where you are and your position and your experience so far. But like you're saying, part of your role as a young architect and a part one or a part two or a part three is about trying to guide yourself and guide your journey. I think it's difficult, and that's why I'm trying to provide some support to you guys, and so are you. It's a difficult process, but you need to try and a little bit plan your way through this career. What are you passionate about, where you want to be, what you want to do, and how you're going to go and get there, sort of thing. So I think it's in part it's take what comes to you, and in part it's have an idea of what your plan is. Also, architecture's it's a bloody long career path, and it's a long journey. But for me, I always say I can't think of another job that's so varied and rewarding. I do completely different things each day, and different experiences, and you get to work with so many different people and learn. Like I was saying, we need to know a little bit about lots of things, but you get to talk to these people that have incredible specialist knowledge with these particular things, and learn really interesting and valid and varied information from them. And I always use this analogy. My first job was working on a hospital, and post part one, given a plan by the project architect, and I set out some acoustic ceiling tiles. Very, very simple, very But me going to site, later on, a few months down the line, and noticing that the ceiling tiles are up, and it come from a drawing I'd done. It sounds banal, but the reality is like that tangible thing about us making a drawing of something or designing something, and it coming into reality, and the benefits that can bring is really heartwarming, and really that's why I got into the job. So I think it's easy to feel disenfranchised by architecture, and in part it's such a massive problem, but also we need to think of ways to improve it. And sometimes we're probably not in the position to have that power, but also we need to come to the table with the ideas and try and move our position forward. So ultimately, I think architecture is a really good career path.
It is actually. It is.
I would encourage anyone to carry on and stay strong through it. But yeah, if you ever need any help, please talk to us.
Yeah. So I think it's a very good closure to this conversation. But I also want to add on just one point. Basically, yeah, stay strong in the cause as well, but also look out for support. Don't be in this journey alone. That's what I see a lot of people are like. The main reason why they are leaving is because maybe they do not talk about it, and then they keep it to themselves, and they do not actively solve the problem, or maybe talk to the bosses about it, and to see how can we improve the working environment. So you are in control. Whoever's listening, you are in control of this journey, right? This architecture journey, and feel free to go left, to go right, to discover what you truly want to do as an architectural designer. You may not be an architect in the conventional sense, but you're still impacting the built environment, and in a positive way, in your own way. So that is the takeaway that I hope anyone who's listening can take away with. And that concludes our conversation. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you, Chris, for the time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, take care.